Okay, so, well, I do. I've been an architect and I've been designing and building systems for the last 21 years. And in the last 9 years, I've spent actually building microservices. And 8 years ago, I designed a workshop for developers and architects to teach them about microservices. And it sold very well. People are very happy with it. And then 4 years ago, what I found is that I got invited by companies who have already failed with implementing microservices, meaning they've spent a lot of money, they get nothing. So basically, when they do that, what happens is that it's either one of two things. First, it's either that people do not have any experience with distributed systems or with microservices, so the design is wrong, the architecture is wrong. But that's half of the problem. The other half of the companies were actually having another problem, which is management didn't change. And they thought that the microservice architecture is just architecture. So they made no changes, and then everything just crumbled. It's harder, actually, than easier these days. So that was for the companies that I didn't do any workshops for. So that was easy, right? You should have hired me before. But then what happened is the people I actually had a chance of teaching came back, and they said, you know what? We have all the tools. We are already doing this. And it's harder than easier because our management doesn't understand it. So can you teach our managers? Can you teach the executive board, for example, of the whole company? Can you finally teach everyone in the company? And this year alone, what I've been doing is half of the time I'm teaching the architects and half of the time I'm teaching managers. A company is hiring me for 250 managers to train with microservices, or another one just decided to, let's train everyone, like just pretty much everyone in the company, right? So what is the problem? What they do not understand is that the implementation of the microservices actually fails. Well, the story goes like this. They don't understand why we do it. So in 1973, there was this guy, Fred Brooks, who actually failed a huge project for IBM, okay? And he was late for 3 months, just designing the architecture. And then he decided to add 150 people to the design board of this architecture. And it turned out that they were late 3 months. Now they are later 1 year and 3 months, in addition to whatever else was to be done there. So he found out that maybe it doesn't work very well to add new people there. And he decided that he knows why. He wrote a book about it in 1975. And he said, well, when you have one person, one developer, you have some kind of productivity. When you add another one, you don't get twice the productivity. Instead, you have like 1.9, because now those people have to talk with each other. But then you add a third one, and now you have 2.8, because those people have to talk to each other, and there's more talking, more communication, more synchronization. And when you have a large project for hundreds and thousands of people, the synchronization at some point actually kills productivity altogether. And now when you add more people, there are meetings all of the time. And basically people have no time to do their work, right? So he said, in every large project, there is this situation, synchronization kills productivity, don't go beyond this scope. If you are small, you won't even notice this. And for the next 38 years, everyone thought this has got to be done this way. Like there's no other way around it. Until in 2012, the guys from ThoughtWorks in Poland, in Krakow, actually presented their findings about the project that they had, which involved hundreds and thousands of developers. And they said, we are going to try to do something different here. Because what if we remove all points of synchronization between people or between teams? At that point, we are going to be in the lower left corner, and so we are going to really speed up. And so they came up with 9 different requirements to do it. So basically they said, you have to change this, and we actually changed that so that you can have some benefits of this architecture. They called it architecture, even though it's actually not only architecture itself. So their idea is that when you remove all points of synchronization, when you add people, you are more productive in a linear scale. They were wrong. It turns out, and we know this from companies like AWS and from Azure, from Microsoft, it turns out that the graph actually looks more like this, because every time you build new stuff, you actually speed up building other new stuffs. So basically, new features are faster than the ones before, as the system grows and we have more and more people, more and more software. So from an economical perspective, that's the best situation to be in, right? And so everybody learned how to do microservices, except because it's called architecture, people thought that this is about, the technical stuff. And out of these 9 points, actually 6 of them are only about the culture and organization and management of the company and the processes, and that's it. So 6 out of 9 are not about technology, it's about organization. And so this is what the people do not know, and that's where the problem lies. So the first thing that you have to introduce is to actually have products instead of projects. So basically, ignore when you have a project, you have some kind of a goal. You have something that you want to deliver. You got a start date and an end date, and then you move resources around because that's what management does, right? But when you have a product, it's completely different. You basically give away all the power and responsibility to a team. You tell them, this is your client, okay? And you're going to say, we are going to find out whether they are happy, and that's how we'll know if you do a good job or not. And that's pretty much it. And you have, in the product team, you have full control over the product, meaning you do not actually implement what your customers want, okay? Instead, you deliver what you think the product needs for the customer to succeed. And the relation between you and your customer or the business unit is actually crucial. They have to be happy at the end of the day. But that doesn't mean that they are going to tell you exactly what to do, and instead you are going to tell them what to do quite often. Or you are going to tell them no. So you are in a full control of the product, but you are responsible for the outcomes. And if they are unhappy at the end of the year, they will say, we don't want to finance you anymore, and you are going to lose your job. And then, from that perspective, you are comparing your product against the whole market all the time. Because at any point in time, they can say, you know what, this thing that you're building, it's nice, but we can buy off-the-shelf product which is nicer than that. And so you have to be competitive, not within your organization, but across the whole world, okay? And that's a completely different thing. So when all the decisions are actually in the hands of the product team, what are the decisions that the management makes? Only 4. So a manager in product teams, what they do, they decide whether they need a new product. We already have a CRM software, for example, but it's kind of shitty. So maybe we should actually build our own. Does it make sense from an economical perspective, right? Then the next decision that they make is, do we need a new team for that product? Or can we give that product to an existing team? How would it work? Well, a team can have several products, but they can only work at the same time on one of them. But products grow, and at some point they are kind of stable, and you have no new features. You don't have whatever you can kind of think of, it's not making more money. So that's the point when you can actually take over another product. And then they decide, should we actually abandon the product because it's not making enough money? It could be even making good money, just like Google does all the time, but it's not enough. We actually could make much more with these people, right? So we are going to abandon the product. And the last decision, maybe we should abandon the team because, for example, there is some alpha male as the team leader and everybody else is just living in like half a year because people actually cannot keep up with the guy. So at that point, you have to disband the team altogether. So in essence, that's everything a manager does. So what they do is they basically work as a venture capital, and the product team works like a startup. Everything that happens inside the startup is in their hands, okay? But they can lose financing and basically get disbanded if they're not doing a good job. So if that's the case, if the product team actually decides what they want to build instead of listening to the customer, how can they actually decide about this, right? Here's how. First of all, we do prototyping. Prototyping is how, for example, a Dropbox was created, right? You remember maybe Dropbox? Basically, the situation was like this. They didn't build the product. They put a video on the website about how it's going to work, and it was all fake. And then you could subscribe. And you could actually buy it or get email later on when they have that ready, right? So they found out during their market research by just faking it, how many people would actually like this product. And then at that point, they started to actually build it. The same, for example, with Allegro Smart or something like that. It's called Allegro Smart, I think, which is how did they, when they had the idea, okay, which they stole from Amazon, by the way, they decided to actually verify this idea. So they started showing up pop-ups of, you know, you can buy this Allegro Smart and have all the packages that delivered for free completely if you just pay upfront for the whole year and with the random number. And so they could verify whether this actually makes sense and what was the number that should be there, how much people should pay. So we do a lot of prototyping instead of implementing it blindly. And then when we prototype, after that, we do prototyping, which means I'm trying to implement something just to validate my hypothesis about how hard it is to implement. And those prototypes are always removed from production because they only answer one question. Is it difficult to build? And then we can actually decide that we are going to build the feature that the business wants because, for example, prototyping tells us so. Or we can decide that we are not going to do it because it doesn't make economical sense. It's not going to make money. So instead what we are going to do is we are going to do exploration. So we are going to search for the features that we could sell. Okay, and this is in the hands of the IT, not the business department itself. And none of this is possible if you need approvals for changing direction. So basically, you cannot commit to anything because you are searching the value on the market, and that's how you build a product. And this is in the hands of a single IT team. So no commitment means you are free to search for value, but you can also say no. And all those decisions are at the bottom when you can actually see the effects and how it works. Visibility is the highest there. And then ThoughtWorks says we need decentralized governance, meaning all the decisions that are currently centralized, they need not to be centralized anymore. So what that means is that maybe you have standards, maybe you have documents like software development lifecycle, how we do software. Throw them all away, because instead what we are going to have is we are going to have product teams that can define everything themselves. All right, you say, but then we have problems which are common, like we all have this kind of a problem to solve. Therefore, you can have things like guilds, like architecture guild, for example, which are recommendation bodies. They do work this way that we create a work group for 4 people usually. We do some research, we implement something, we show the solution to everyone, to all the product teams, but we do not enforce these solutions. We just say, this is how it works. If you need to solve this problem, this is what we recommend. If you want to do it otherwise, it's all in your hands because you are responsible for the product. So the decision-making is completely decentralized. And then the next thing you can do after you decentralize everything and remove all the synchronization, you can look at the cognitive load and the problems with decisions. Because, you know, the research shows that we have a budget for decisions every day. And we run out of those budget, we cannot make any more decisions. We are basically a couch potato at this point. So they found it out that they've made an experiment with students, mathematical students, that were going to an exam, right? Half of them were actually given a breakfast, but they had no choice in what that breakfast is going to be. The other half was given a breakfast, but they could choose from several different things, right? And those people who had to choose what they are going to get for breakfast were actually statistically significantly doing worse on the exam than the people who didn't have that choice. And that's because, they explain, we have that budget for decision making. And if you run out of that budget, you're not going to make any decisions. So from that perspective, think about it this way. All the departments of the company, they can quite often create a lot of cognitive load on the developers and the productive team. I've seen an HR department which actually required, like if you wanted to go for a holiday, there was a procedure 3 PDF pages long, okay? You had to send 4 emails, basically, and fill out like a lot of forms. And basically what happens is that the person who was doing this would not do any work whatsoever for the rest of the day. It's over, it's game over. Another situation was that the manager wanted everyone to, or the owner of the company wanted everyone to fill up the spreadsheet about something like a timesheet, basically, right? What you were working on with a very detailed one, like 15 minutes resolution, right? And so what happens, he says, oh, it's gonna take only 15 minutes at the end of the day that you're gonna fill it up, right? But that's 15 minutes of time. from the perspective of the budget for energy of making decisions, that's 2 hours of your work. So that 15 minutes means this is a huge cost, 2 hours every day that you're not going to do any work because you cannot make any more decisions. So here's the rule. Make it illegal for any department to increase cognitive load for anyone and automate that shit. And basically ask people for minimum information and then remove everything else, right? And the same thing works with self-service. So basically, whenever you build something, do not, if you want to go with microservices, you want to go with removing all the synchronization points, do not require me to talk with anyone or to ask anyone. Make it so that it's critical and easy for me to basically fill up the forms myself and learn from the good documentation that is written from my perspective and not from the perspective of somebody who implemented all that stuff. And you may even, as a manager, you may even not like how some of those teams are organized. Me, for example, I like the meritocracies. And so a person that has the most knowledge about that stuff makes the decision, or if you have several people in the team, and that's usually the case, they talk with each other, right? And they come with a consensus. And then there are democracies. I prefer meritocracies, but democracies also work. I can work with that. And that's where people are just voting, right? What I don't like is autocracies, when there is a single leader and they make all the decisions. However, it doesn't matter that I don't like it. It turns out there's a lot of people who actually love this. Okay? So if the team works and you don't like how they work, but the outcomes are okay, you have no right in saying anything about that team. Okay? That's the point. Just remember, something works for them, it doesn't need to work for you. It's fine. You don't have to centralize those things. And then, of course, we need FinSec DevOps. That's finances and the security and operations inside the development team. So whenever I go somewhere and I see a team already which is called DevOps, and it's separate from development team, I know they have failed completely, right? Because they don't understand this. And then basically they just renamed operations as DevOps. And final thought is this. Microservices and micromanagement have both the word micro inside of them, but they are not compatible at all. In fact, microservices is the best way we know, the most effective way of building large systems. And micromanagement is the worst possible way from the productivity standpoint, right? So when you have a manager with product teams without micromanagement, with real microservices, I usually see one person managing 50 different people. Because what they do is they have 10 teams, and they only make 4 decisions about each of those teams, and that's it. So they can work with and manage 50 people. But when I see project teams and companies that do not do microservices correctly, I quite often see a manager for 8 people. What kind of processes do you have to fuck up to have one person for every 8 people managing them? Like, what's going on in here, right? This is such a huge waste. And so I would like to leave you with that one thought. You have to redefine what managers are responsible for. And here I'm going to with Management 3.0 from Jürgen Appello, which is managers are not supposed to make decisions. They are supposed to build the system which allows other people to make decisions. And with microservices, those decisions should not be centralized. And we remove all the synchronization, and that's how you get productivity. Thank you.
All right, now time for a couple of questions. Again, we have a list of pretty good questions, so you would have to chase them down in the corridors.
My email is in the bottom. Oh, it's not already there. Yeah.
So the first one, during the architecture changes that you supported and introduced, have you met Scrum Masters or Agile coaches on your way? How did they help you?
They don't help me at all. Scrum Master and Agile coaches have nothing to do with architecture, because architecture is a very technically intricate thing. So basically, it's not about the process. It's about the technology here, right? And another thing is that both the Agile coach and Scrum Master are roles. In my last team, what I had a team of 7 people, 1 junior guy, and 6 developers or with senior people, right? Out of the 6 developers, 6 of them had a Scrum Master certificate. That's what you get after working 20 years in this industry, right? So at that point, when you have such experienced people, it doesn't really matter, right? We know all that stuff. And basically, Scrum has got nothing to do with architecture whatsoever. The architecture has got a lot to do with what you get at the end.
All right, and one more. How to talk with the team that it's not business should come with the new ideas.
All right, so this is actually quite complex, and I don't have much time, but I'll tell you this. The team, the idea behind microservices is that those people feel responsible for the product, right? So they will come with the ideas because they will want their product to succeed. And so they'll come to the business and say, hey, we got an idea, or the other companies are doing this, and we think we can deliver this as well. And the reason for it is because they feel responsible for the outcomes because they have all the power. Right? And when I go to a company and an owner of the company says things like, well, I don't have that people. These people, my people have like a slave mindset, right? So basically they do what they are told and that's it. I can't change them like overnight. So basically we are not ready yet for it. And then I have asked him, okay, so when are you going to be ready? Because if you treat all your people as children, they will stay children forever. Okay? If you want them to grow up, you have to start treating them like adults. And when you do that, a lot of them will actually fail. Get rid of those people. And the other ones will be perfect because they will feel empowered and now they will make those decisions. And that's how you get the people and the teams with good setup for it.
Thanks so much, Kuba.
Thank you.